Jazzcast Pros.
Have you ever heard the saying, find the third door? It is this idea that a lot of times we see a front door and a back door, but when you look for the third door, that is the creative and probably the easiest way to get into somewhere. The idea, using that metaphor is like a club or something like that. But I really like this metaphor for today's conversation because we are going to be talking to two absolute bosses about how they used the third door to create speaking gigs for themselves and how that's grown their businesses. I cannot wait for you to hear this conversation with Kelly and Kelly, who are also podcast hosts. Their podcast, Getting Real with Bossy, was one of the first podcasts I was ever on. But by the end of this episode, you will be inspired to go after something you want, even if it's not in the conventional way you think you should go after it. Welcome to High Vibe Table Talks, the podcast to help you, the cautiously ambitious woman, remove mental barriers and take action now so that you can achieve your high vibe desires. I'm Rashawn, your high vibe curator, cheerleader, and accountability partner. As a wife, a mother, and an entrepreneur who recently quit my job to follow my dreams, I understand why you may be hesitant to throw caution to the wind and take that leap. So I always like to start for the audience to share a little bit about you, who you are, where you are, and then who you serve.
Okay,
Kelly
I'll start.
Bush, do you want to start?
Yeah. Sure. Kelly Bush. I'm in Rochester, New York. I co-own a bar and grill called Marshall Street Bar and Grill with my husband, also the Union Tavern, which is right on Lake Ontario. And I'm the co-owner and founder of Bossy.
All right, I'm Kelly Metras, also in Rochester, New York. I own Selena's Mexican Restaurant and the market building at I-Square. And I am also co-owner and co-founder of Bossy.
There are two things I kind of wanted to focus on today. First, that you both have restaurant locations, which is a niche that I haven't had on the podcast before. But secondly, when we were in Denver, we sat in on a presentation where they talked about creating speaking gigs for yourself and really creating a career path for yourself as a speaker. You both kind of have done that without the super expensive product that they were selling. So can you tell us a little bit about how you did that, how it's impacted your businesses and kind of that journey over the past, 7-8 months? So not a long time.
I know for me, I ended up speaking with that gentleman who did the presentation, and it became very clear early on that this was just a pitch for their program, which was like $10,000, which I'm sure is worth it if that's, I kind of sat there and I was like, yeah, that seems like a reasonable amount of money, but then this can't be my full-time job. And I think for some people that can be. So, and when we were sitting in that presentation, I'm listening and some of the steps they're teaching about is stuff I've already done. So I was president of the New York State Restaurant Association at the beginning of the pandemic. Kelly was at the end. So I've been on the news. I've been in press conferences. So a lot of the teaching points they were going to give us, I'm like, I've already done this. I feel like I just need to learn what I'm an expert at and then stick to that and talk about that. And if people want that, then they can come find it.
How about for you, Kelly?
For me, it was a similar organic matter. We didn't realize we were already doing it. Part of Bossy's underlying goal is to just be real and honest and raw and sharing those experiences in that knowledge base so that other people don't have to learn things the hard way. And that's the entire premise of everything we've done for the past decade with Bossy. So we're doing it already. So we were doing it through seminars. We were doing it through local meetings. And then with the pandemic and the Restaurant Association, we found ourselves getting really good at PR and just to continue sharing those things. I hate being interviewed. It is... Even this, I'm nervous. I have to not look at the screen. I have to just stare at you guys. I hate that I can see myself. I want to turn my camera off. I don't like being on Zoom meetings, which is how we spent years of our life, right? For that reason, I like the camera off. I don't like to see myself. I blame it on growing up in the 80s and 90s. But I know the benefit for my business. And I think a lot of people don't take that into account when they get the opportunity to speak. So whether we're trying to expand Bossy, or I'm trying to get people to know about my restaurants. Anytime you can get in front of a camera or a group of people and talk about what you're doing is just great advertising. So we were doing it in an advertising standpoint, but we really hadn't thought about it of oh, we're already doing this. We should probably promote it. And then hopefully we can do it more often.
Yeah. So Kelly B, you mentioned finding what you're an expert at. And I think that can feel weird initially. What did that look like for you? Like how did you do that?
I mean, trial and error. There was something I really felt I was an expert at. And then in the situation, I found myself kind of stumbling over my words. And, I was like, this might be something I don't talk about again as a speaker. So the most important thing to me about running your own business is kind of knowing why you're doing it, knowing your story. And I kind of go from that. It's the things that I feel like I'm an expert at. I spent a long time trying to figure out how to sell my businesses. And we're still always trying to figure that out. But what makes us different is the things that I feel like I can speak about comfortably.
Yeah.
Therapy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh. Say more about that.
It reminds me of all that I've accomplished because I'm sure that men have self-doubt, but they're born and raised in a society that teaches them to kind of fake it. Whereas women were supposed to be like internal and quiet and don't step on toes and don't say you're an expert, cause that's bragging. That's not, and trying to navigate those different feelings. So it's opposing, right? I recently posted about it in my new business purchase. It's like, I have to remind myself because I'm told by so many people that I'm not that great. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not successful. And I'm like, but wait, I am. I actually have been doing 10,000 hours. I've done well more than 10,000 hours in so many topics at this point that no, you're wrong. I am really good at this. I do know what I'm talking about. And just having, when you're talking about those stressors with somebody who's trying to help your mental state, having that third party, that person that's not necessarily in your corner, right? They're just there to keep it real, remind you like, hey, it's okay. You can be strong. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you a bitch. I don't know if I can swear on this show. Sorry.
Yes. What I love about that too is like getting real with Bossy was created of like taking back that word because there is such a negative connotation and we can be like, I don't want to be bossy. I don't want to be a bitch. I'm not an expert. Who am I? And that internal dialogue is so loud. And so to have like a therapist help you kind of be a reflection of like, hey, that's actually not true, to then start to learn yourself that you can have it outside of the therapy sessions of like, I am an expert. Like I do have experience. I have built many successful businesses. So yeah, you have both been entrepreneurs for a long time and juggling a lot of different niches. And how do you find the balance and harmony between growing a business like Bossy that is service-based and the restaurant side of things, and now Kelly at Metras with your new building acquisition, which has multiple businesses and so much room for growth. How do you manage all of those things?
A good, strong team. I think we both can definitely attest to that. I know I'm fortunate to have a business partner who is also my life partner, which is sometimes not so great, but we can have those real, honest, raw conversations and not worry about hurting each other's feelings. Or when we do, we just move on. But having very defined roles has been incredibly important. We have very specific things that we're in charge of that people know to go to. So it's not so much all on me or all on him. And being able to, it's like for home time, what does that look like? If we rare night that we have a night off together, is that a night where we want to go out and be social and do something and create a memory? Or is it a night to melt into the couch, which is usually what it is? And also when he's working and I have the night off, what does that look like for me? Do I want to reconnect with a friend? Do I want to go out? Or do I want to melt into the couch? And just really kind of taking stock of where we're at and just making decisions at that moment and not like planning too far ahead, because sometimes we'll make a plan and I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm exhausted. I was on all day. I don't want to be in front of people anymore.
I second all of that, making sure roles are defined, whether it's your life partner, your business partner, your management team, your servers, your production team, like whatever it is that you're partnering with, having really defined goals and expectations of like, this is what I can do. Like when I give out the job descriptions, which I just did 2 weeks ago with my new team, I include mine. My job is not your job. You're not going to see me doing your job unless I have to. This is my job. These are the things I'm working on. But the way I look at it is they're all service-based businesses. We have a customer base. We have a clientele. Every person, like all of the Bossy members are my boss. All of the customers that come in are my boss. Like my goal is to reach their need and make them want to come back. So it doesn't matter if, it's something I have employees for or not. It's just that, okay, well, you have a Zoom room and you have the people you're meeting their needs. The needs of the people I'm meeting at the restaurant are just food and drink and experience based. You're doing experience based as well. It's just the experience doesn't include food and drink. So it's just, what is it that you're coming to me with a need for? Am I giving you the best possible thing I can give? And if not, how do I fix that?
Yeah. One of the things that lights me up about working with entrepreneurs is like they have this calling and this way they want to show up into the world. And sometimes it is in a restaurant. Sometimes it is at a bar. Sometimes it is with something like Bossy. Sometimes, and it, at the end, it feels like the why and the alignment is the same. It's just different spokes on the same wheel. And it's okay to like want to show up as a different spoke in that season, whatever that kind of looks like. And I also heard like a lot of transparency in there and vulnerability, and being an entrepreneur is one of the most confronting experiences that you can have. Would you both agree with that?
Strongly agree.
Like how does that?
There are lots of people that tell you what you're doing wrong. Whereas when you have a job, there's generally just a pocket of people telling you what you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
Or what they think you're doing wrong, right? Like nobody walks into an office building and is like, when I called yesterday, I didn't like the service you gave me, or like 1-star review, your business sucks. Like that doesn't really happen in other places unless you're a business owner.
Definitely. And I think the restaurant industry too is under more this insane microscope. Not that all entrepreneurs aren't, but man, they are, they like to complain more than compliment sometimes, certainly online.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Behind the keyboard is a very safe place to complain about all the things. So you recently both put on a wonderful retreat. It was so much fun. It was so invigorating and educating and exciting. So from that perspective, you were on the other side of like booking people to speak. I would love to hear your experience from both sides of like what makes a really good pitch, or, not only to be booked, but also to book a speaker. What stands out to both of you from that? I think
for like looking at pitches, and also too with podcasts, and I'm sure you get this too, if you're going to want to be in my conference or on my podcast, do a little research. Know who we are, know who we're about. Anybody for this last conference that we didn't know personally, we had a pre-meeting with, which I think is incredibly important. This way they really understand who we are, and more importantly, who their audience is going to be. We found that out, that you, as our own selves being speakers, knowing who you're speaking to is incredibly important, and that can change your entire pitch, your entire presentation. So I think that pre-interview is incredibly important, and something I will request every time I am engaging in a speaking engagement.
And we do the same thing for the podcast as well. We always either know you ahead of time. So we already know, like if you're a Bossy member, we know your background, you know us, like you participate in the group. We don't need to pre-meet per se. But if we don't know you, you're not a member, you're a new member, we don't know the story, then we make sure that we're going to talk ahead of time and that it's a good fit for both of us. Because nobody wants to be either a presenter or a speaker or on your podcast if they aren't a good fit.
How do you have those hard conversations when it's not a good fit?
We've been really lucky so far. It hasn't happened often. Most of the time we do our research and we are just like, I don't think this is going to work. And we don't even go into the pre-meet stage. So it's kind of like an interview, right? So like you've already screened them before you go into the pre-meet. It's really easy to answer an email and be like, thank you. I just don't know that this is a great fit. This is what we're looking for. It doesn't seem like you line up. And most people are like, oh yeah, I didn't realize that. You're right. So that pre-screening really helps. And then it's just getting honest
I think we have experience, right?
I love everything you've said.
It's not that different from, it's
like
not that
firing an
different from
employee.
having employees. There are many employees I've had to let go. It's just not the right fit. They're not good. They're not bad. It's just, this isn't the right place for you. And if you kind of take that approach, it kind of is a lot more simple. It's not blaming anybody other than it's just not the right fit. It's like behavior management in general, like focus on the behavior, not the person. This is just focus. This isn't the right fit.
Yeah. It's interesting to see how muscles that you use as an entrepreneur kind of like leak into other aspects of your life. Because I'm sure you've had to have hard conversations with your business partners who are also your life partners and employees and customers and kids. And, it's another muscle that I think you get better at using even and just more comfortable with the discomfort.
Well, because you know how uncomfortable it's going to get. It's if I do it now, it's uncomfortable. It's like when I tell my kids, I'm like, if you're in trouble, you need to tell me first. Because if I find out from someone else, I'm going to be so much more angry. If you tell me first, I'm going to be angry. But then when they come to me, I'm not going to blow up. Right. So it's like, if I address this now, and honestly, then it's not going to become a blow up situation. It's not going to be anything. Just had a conversation with an employee this week. Listen, I just want to let you know where I'm at because the outcome of whatever happened was not something I agreed with. And I'm really upset and disappointed by it, but I don't want things to be weird with us. And I felt like if I didn't say something, it was going to get weird and there was going to be some blow up down the road. And it's just like, hey, we have to have this honest conversation so that we can both move forward and we both know where we're at. And it's the same thing if you're not going to have a speaker or a podcast interview with someone, just being honest.
So you have both made a lot of decisions today, this week, this month, but in your whole time as entrepreneurs and going back to like thinking about the presentation that happened with the speaker, I think it was the Speaker Lab was the product that pitched in Denver. It's one of those balances of like, okay, do I spend the money to kind of fast track this result? Or do I kind of go about it and dig into like my own resources? And like sometimes I think that if either of you have read Rachel Rogers' book, We Should All Be Millionaires, she talks about like $1 million decisions. And sometimes you have to spend the money to get the result that you want. Like I'm never going to learn how to change my own oil. I'm just going to go get my oil changed, So how, when you're looking at a decision of to spend the money and kind of ramp that up or do it yourself, what types of questions do you ask yourself? How do you know which is the right way to go?
Well, I think like Kelly said earlier, a lot of it is, do I have the time to get the return on investment? I'd love to be a full-time speaker. I would love to share my knowledge with the world. I know that the two of us know so much stuff about running a business, but I have to run my businesses. I have a life that is demanding right now. So it's like, okay, well, maybe in a year or two, if things calm down, we can readdress it. Maybe Kelly will decide next year, I'm going to put the money in and be a speaker and I'm going to fully support her. But I know next year I'm not going to be in that space because I just started a new business, right? So, or maybe I will, who knows? Maybe everything's going to go so smooth that I'm like, hey, Kelly, let's do this. So I think understanding what you really have the time and the money for, because if you're going to take on that investment, just like I just took on this investment, we had a very real conversation a year plus ago about what that's going to look like if we move forward, because we do have other things on our plate. We do have other jobs. We do have family, you've got shit to do. So just making sure that if you're going to make that investment in anything, that you're doing it fully. Nobody's going to fix you. You can't pay anybody to fix you if you're not going to participate in it. I could pay my therapist $1 million. She's not going to fix me unless I participate $1 million worth.
Right.
I think too, as business owners, we're very familiar with putting a lot of time and energy into things that really shouldn't be our job or things that we really don't want to do. So I think we get really, really good at acknowledging those things and moving them on to other people, or spending the time to really make that our job if it's something that's really giving us, making us feel passionate, or we're seeing that return on investment. So I think, when you're looking into something like that presentation, like if you have the time and money and that's really going to bring you joy, do it. It's going to be a good investment. And even if you aren't the most famous speaker, it's going to teach you really good things to run your business in general. So just really taking a hard look. Is this something you really want to commit to? Because you have to for that kind of money.
And we're also huge proponents of a business plan, and not the fluffy parts, right? You can enjoy writing the fluffy parts and the passion parts, but it's the numbers part. If I take this on, how many tacos do I need to sell an hour? Can I sell that many tacos an hour? I have enough people to help me sell that many tacos an hour, right? It breaks down to a very specific number. If I'm going to spend $10,000 to have this person teach me how to be a speaker, how many engagements do I need to get that money back? What is the probability? What's the average pay? Do I have to pay all of the travel fees to get to each engagement? Are they on Zoom? So like really breaking down what that means for you and how you're going to get that money back.
And what's beautiful about like both parts of what you both touched on is the alignment and the feeling and the more like feminine aspect of like, how would this make me feel? And the tactical, more masculine of like, how many tacos do I really have to sell an hour to do it? And like, that's a less emotional part. But I think that we don't want to take all the emotion out of it because that then like, what's kind of the point? And so being able to reflect on both aspects of that is so crucial. So you both started Bossy out of a sense of craving community for women, and you have since opened Bossing, which also includes men into that conversation of, real honest conversations with entrepreneurs. I'm obviously a huge proponent of community. So can you share why having community on this journey is so important to you?
Being a business owner can be really lonely. Like it can be really isolating. I think now 14 years in, a lot of the people I know and communicate with daily are business owners, but it wasn't that way 14 years ago. So not having people to really talk to was really frustrating. And luckily I had Kelly and we were on a very similar life path and still are. So it's always been great to bounce things off of her and being able to create a space where people can do that, where they can say, I'm struggling, or I need help, or I need support. That's so important because it can be so isolating, and feeling like you're not alone is really important, because feeling like you are alone can be the thing that makes you fail.
100%. All of those things. And that feeling that we used to get when we would meet, we wanted to share with other people. We're like, if we feel this good being in a space just for this 1 hour a month that we can squeak out,
right?
How many other people could feel this good? And when we talk about expanding Bossy, it's always how many people can we get to feel this good? Because you want to be in groups of all different shapes and sizes, but having that one space where you just get to be honest and vulnerable and however it is that you're coming in. And it's not for everybody. Not everybody's looking for it. A lot of people are too scared for it and they don't trust other people, especially other women, which is very common. We are not the group that only lets in one, hair salon and one restaurant. And we're not the group that's forcing you to intermingle or forcing you to attend events. And we're the group that you just show up if you can. We get life is crazy. And if you have a question, ask it. And if you don't, just hang out, just be in that space where we know that everyone in that space has everything on the line.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. And I always leave the Bossy meetings feeling like $1 million. I can do all the things. So thank you for creating
Mission
that.
accomplished.
Well, it's so funny because a lot of times I'm so busy and so stressed out and my life is so crazy. And I'm like, oh my God, could be the one night I have off, right? Because like I already had my calendar booked, so I couldn't book anything else. And I'm like, I just want to melt into my couch. I just want, and then I drag myself there and I'm like, and then once I get there, and then I leave a couple hours later and I'm like, I could conquer the world.
Exactly. Kelly, are you ready for lightning round questions?
Oh, yes.
All right.
Okay.
What is a must-read book for you?
I won't say what I normally would say because it's Kelly's and she introduced it to me, but I just read a book called Start With Why, and it's outdated. It was written in 2009, so I've said to Kelly several times we could redo it, but that's definitely the most important business book, I think.
I have two. One is Zombie Loyalist by Peter Shankman. That's my business book, technically, that I tell everybody they need to read, and I make my managers read, and we talk about zombie loyalism on the regular at work, and if you come into my businesses, you should be able to ask all of my staff what it is, and they should be able to tell you. Some of them get really excited about it. My not quite a business book is The Alchemist, because sometimes you have to remind yourself that you need to clean toilets for a little bit to find the next shiny thing, and that life is not always perfect to get you where you're supposed to be. And it's a short read, and I read it at least once a year to just reset myself.
It's wonderful.
And it works out as my business book because it makes me recenter my life, but it's not technically a business book.
Yeah. No, that's great.
And then I got Kelly on it.
What does creativity mean to you?
Doing something that you're passionate about that not everybody can do, meeting needs that other people can't meet. I think we're in a very much meeting needs business. And I think that's what makes me feel the most creative, is when I can do something a little bit differently or find a new group of people and a new way to meet their needs.
I was just talking with my new staff, and I said, my job is to make your job easier. And it's that creative, out of the box thinking of, okay, you've been doing it this way. Is it the best way to do it? And I do it with my own job. I do it with my existing businesses. Selena's has been around for over 13 years. For us owning it, it's been around for 26 years now. But finding that alternative way to do something, kind of like Kelly said, being like, this is the way we're doing it. Is this the best way? And then finding something new that works better just gets that, because I'm an artist at heart, but on the business side, like that's what gets me going.
Mm-hmm. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Slow down. You stop doing so much. So I think we're told a lot of times as business owners, be fearless, be fearless. And I was listening to a podcast called Dare to Interrupt by Courtney Stanley. Check it out. It's amazing. And there's this quote by Elizabeth Gibson that's, I think it's Elizabeth Gibson, don't be fearless. The only fearless people I know are sociopaths and reckless 3-year-olds. And you really shouldn't be emulating either of those. So be brave, take on challenges, but have your head about, have your wits about you. Don't just be fearless and jump into things, like really make those calculated risks.
Mine is not advice. I've gotten lots of advice that didn't work out, but I love the quote, fairy tales exist not to make you believe in dragons, something along that lines, but they exist to make you believe that dragons can be beaten.
I like that.
I think it's a Terry Pratchett quote, maybe Neil Gaiman or Terry Pratchett. Can't remember the exact words, but it's that magic exists in fun ways.
Last question. What is the coolest shit you've done in the last year or are currently working on?
Definitely our non-alcoholic program is huge. We are meeting a need most people don't even understand is a need. And I love it. I love the journey. I love how the journey's changed by being able to listen to new people coming into our space, in that space, telling us what they need instead of me telling them what they need. It's definitely a different approach for the hospitality industry, because usually you have to be the expert and tell people or coerce them into liking the things you want them to like. But this is a totally different journey, and I am learning so much about it, and I love it, and it's so important.
In the past year, I got out of 3 leases that I didn't want anymore. And I also bought a building with 4 businesses inside of it that I'm now running. So I think I got myself more things in the process of trying to get myself less.
But so many more opportunities.
I'm excited.
Yeah. And embrace the pivot. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for joining today. The 30 minutes always goes by so fast, but especially with fascinating and experienced and well-versed people like you both. So we will put the link to the Bossy group in the show notes. Is there anywhere else you want people to find you?
BossyRock.com, ROC, because that is how Rochester is.
Selena'sMexican.com and the market at iSquare. I'm sorry, marketiSquare.com. I got to remember my new website.
Right. Oh, me personally. Marshall Street Bar and Grill, MarshallStreetBarandGrill.com, and UnionTavernSeabreeze.com.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you both so much for joining High Vibe Table Talks. And remember that big dreams and small steps will transform your life.